Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about kind of maximizing and how training volume itself, at least hypothetically, can maximize your muscle to fat ratio, the gains you make when you're bulking. And I have my own personal experiences with this. I have clients who I've experimented with on this, and I found this to generally be true. And I want to discuss kind of the mechanisms behind it of why it's true. And when we're talking here, we're talking about people who aren't as worried about time constraints. A lot of people don't have time to train near their maximum recoverable volume, or they don't even have a lifestyle to allow them to recover. They might have a lower maximum recoverable volume due to their lifestyle. That's okay, because you do what you can do. I have to do that with clients. But for people who are saying something like, look, I want to gain as much muscle with as little fat as possible when I bulk, who accept that when they bulk, there's probably going to be some fat gain. Unless they're a novice lifter, there's probably going to be some fat gain. But who are saying, hey, can I, by gaining the same amount of weight, gain a better ratio? And I think for people who have the time and resources to expend into that, it's a worthwhile topic to discuss, because some people are going to do that. Again, in my case, I haven't gained any fat this year. Now, I'm not a really lean guy, and we know that. We admit that. I have no illusions about thinking that I'm ripped or 9% body fat. But I've gained substantial muscle in the last year using very high volumes of training. I put 70 pounds on my squat and probably 70 to 80 pounds on my deadlift. And I'm slightly leaner. Not much leaner, slightly leaner than I was a year ago. Right? But I do very, very high training volumes. And it's one of the factors. It's not the only factor, but it's one of them. And I've seen the same thing with clients. My clients who train with higher volumes tend to make leaner gains, who have the time to do it and the recovery. So let's discuss why that is. Okay, first of all, we know that when you eat more food, you will gain muscle even if you're gaining fat, even if you don't train. That's something that people forget. That's something that people forget. Fat people have more muscle than skinny people. Fat people are stronger than skinny people because they have more muscle than them. As a general rule, for people who don't work out, they don't lift weights, who just walk around, a person who gains 80 pounds from overeating versus a skinny guy is going to have more muscle than him on his frame, guaranteed, and he is going to be stronger than him. It's a general rule, 9 out of 10 times. Food is anabolic. It's just that when you don't work out, you gain a lot more fat than you gain muscle, right? That's what we're dealing with. You're dealing with a horrifically bad ratio. That's a bulk. I mean, a fat person who gains 80 pounds bulked, right? They just didn't do it right. They didn't lift weights and they got way too fat, because they probably gained 70 pounds of fat for the 10 pounds of muscle that they gained, all right? Now, skinny guy to lean bulk and gain 10 pounds of muscle is going to take a lot of work to gain pure muscle. But a fat person can do it pretty easy just by gaining an extra 70 pounds of fat to go with it. They'll gain it. That's documented in the research. We know that. So let's think in those terms right now. We know that food in general is anabolic. Anything that you do that allows you to eat more food is going to be more anabolic. Okay, we know that higher volumes of training produce slightly more muscle growth. But it goes a little beyond that. I'm going to get to the neat side of it. Okay, people who use moderate training volume can probably gain nearly their pretty good amounts of muscle. I mean, if you look at the data, moderate training volume with good programming can probably gain you 90% of the muscle growth humanly possible per month. When you go to higher volumes of training, you might squeeze out the last 10% with perfect programming. But even if you don't get the programming perfect, let's say you squeeze out another 5%. Okay, you could double your training volume from moderate volume, and as long as you don't exceed your maximum recoverable volume, you're going to gain a little more. That's what the research shows. That's why we show in the studies that ultra high volumes of training in some studies seem to produce small amounts of more muscle growth. They're not like 10 extra pounds. It's like over the course of 6 months, they gain 1 extra ounce of muscle from the much higher training volumes. It's very, very small. But what else does this do for us? Well, when you start thinking in terms of nutrient partitioning, NEAT and everything else, what do we generally know? People who do more training burn more calories. And it's not because of the calories burned purely during the lifting. Because we know that there's a lot of studies on that. They're poorly done. There's a lot of hypothesis. Well, if you squat 405 for 8 reps, you burn like 10 calories. That's nothing. Yeah, and that is nothing. But you're not factoring in the change in heart rate, the thermic effect, the recovery afterwards. It could actually end up being a lot more. So people who do a lot of volume tend to burn through more calories, quite a bit more. If you double your training volume, I promise you, your NEAT is going to go up several hundred calories every day. Your NEAT, your total thermic effect, your total energy turnover, when it's all combined together, it's going to be several hundred calories higher. All right, so what does that mean? It means in order to gain weight at the same rate, you're going to have to eat more calories than if you trained at half the training volume. In other words, what do we mean? 5 work sets per muscle group once a week or twice a week. That's a nice moderate volume. You'll get growth on that. If they're quality sets, every study we have shows you will gain muscle. If you take it to 10, for most people, that might be getting close to their maximum recoverable volume. A lot of people can be a lot more. We're just talking about the average Joe who has a full-time job and stressors and maybe can only sleep 7 or 8 hours a night. Okay, that's probably approaching their MRV. But that 5 to 10 is potentially going to give them another, 5% muscle growth. Well, if we're gaining more muscle even at the same rate of bulking, we're gaining slightly less fat. Is it enough to write home about? No. But it is more muscle growth. But what else are they doing? They're burning through more total calories. If you eat more, but then you burn through with intense physical activity, burn through more calories, what usually happens? You usually get a better nutrient partitioning overall. All right, you tend to get better insulin sensitivity. You tend to store more of the surplus calories as muscle glycogen. You tend to burn surplus off as thermic effect easier. Right? A lot of different factors happen, particularly when you start eating really high protein. And that kind of comes to another point. Eating really high protein can help with the body composition differences. That's almost worth its own video, I think, though. But that's a winning ticket. It really is. And it sounds very bro, and a lot of the bros would say, well, this is how I train. And, a lot of people will scoff and laugh at the bro guys. But it does seem to work. How many of those bro guys who do really high volumes of training and eat more protein than they really need make pretty good lean gains? A whole lot of them do. Just food for thought. But again, we go back and look at the data. People who train more have better nutrient partitioning, better insulin sensitivity. They might only gain slightly more muscle from the training, but then we need to think over in terms of the nutrient partitioning and the energy turnover. If you're training more, you have to eat more. Now, if you bulk people on the exact same calories and you just put everyone on the same calories who started at the same maintenance, it's going to be different because obviously they're burning through more, so they're going to make only lean gains and they might end up gaining less muscle. But if you adjust calories to compensate, what happens? The people with the higher volumes of training, if you end up burning 300 or 400 more total calories per day on average, you have to eat 300 more calories to gain the same weight. What you tend to find with that is that at that point, you're now maximizing your muscle growth. Now, if they're overeating still, are they still probably going to gain some body fat? Yes. But let's take someone who's training at half of their maximum recoverable volume, and we'll call that as 5 sets per muscle group. Good sets, quality sets, twice a week, right? So about 10 total sets a week. And you put them on a 500 calorie surplus, they're going to have a fat to muscle ratio that's noticeable, right? And they need that surplus to maximize muscle growth. But you take the guys who double the training volume and they burn another 400 total calories a day because their NEAT and everything goes up with the extra calories. They have a higher thermic effect, higher recovery needs, not just the training and the elevated heart rate from all the training and all that. Well, what happens? You tend to find that even though they're gaining just as much muscle, if not a hair more muscle, because it's only going to be a little bit more, a lot of times they end up gaining less fat. And in some cases, they gain half of the amount of fat. So if you're talking about doing a bulk over the course of, say, 5 months, you're going to do a 5-month bulk. And at the end of that 5-month bulk, you've gained half of the fat that you would have gained, right? Let's take the first person. Let's say they had gained 10 pounds of fat, but the second person with a higher volume of training only gained 5 pounds of fat due to overall better nutrient partitioning, gained a hair more muscle, a few pounds less fat, and both of them want to decide they want to get back down to the body composition they were at before the bulk with a little cut. Which one's going to have to cut faster? It's going to have to cut harder. The guy who gained 10 pounds of fat versus the guy who gained 5 or 6. And that's with similar levels of muscle growth. So the other one's going to have to cut 4 or 5 more pounds of fat. Who's going to lose more muscle? He is, or he's going to have to cut longer before he can go back in bulk again. Right? If you're really trying to maximize your body composition, and I'm not as big on that as a lot of people, but if you really care about that, it would make sense to train with higher volumes of training during your bulking phases. It really does. You probably need to approach your maximum recoverable volume. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.